Hi friends, as you all know, the Indian economy is currently facing several challenges. Inflation is on the rise, the GDP growth rate is also slowing down, and there's also a growing concern about the economic issues. But now there's another major shock on the horizon, and that is the impact of the recent oil sanctions imposed by the US on Russia, which will have a direct effect on India. Let's take a deeper look into these sanctions and understand as to how they will impact India's economy. So let's start with the current economic challenges in India. Before we dive into the sanctions, it's essential to recognize the economic pressures India is already facing. Our GDP growth rate is declining. The GDP growth rate has already slipped down to a 7 quarter low. It has fallen sharply from 8.6% in quarter 3 of 2024 to 5.4% at quarter 2 of 2025. Also, the rupee continues to weaken, and inflation is also on the rise, especially in the urban cities. If we speak about the corporate profits, then they have also decreased significantly. And along with these circumstances, the recent sanctions on Russian oil will just add another layer of uncertainty. So, what are these sanctions? The U.S. under President Biden's administration has imposed new sanctions on Russian oil, particularly targeting certain Russian oil producers and 183 tankers which were responsible for transporting Russian oil. The sanctions are all set to fully take effect after 12th March, which gives India a brief window of time to actually manage this situation. These sanctions are more severe than the previous measures and also include secondary sanctions. This means that if India continues to deal with the Russian companies or use the sanctioned oil tankers, then it could face sanctions from the US as well. This actually poses a serious risk to India's economy, especially in terms of the access to financial markets and also trade with the American companies. So let's understand the context as to India's dependence on Russian oil. Now, India is highly dependent on Russian oil. Before the Russia-Ukraine conflict, India had imported oil mostly from the Middle East and Venezuela. But since the war, Russia has provided oil to India at a significant discount. Today, about 40% of India's oil imports come directly from Russia. In fact, Russian oil supplies are crucial to Indian refiners, and in the last year alone, 30 out of 183 tankers that delivered Russian oil were to India. Now, if India complies with these new sanctions, then it could face a loss of 5.5 lakh barrels of oil per day, which will further strain India's energy needs. So, what will be the impact on the oil prices? So, the immediate consequences of these sanctions is an increase in crude oil prices. Since the announcement, the price of crude oil has already risen above $80 per barrel, and it's expected to climb up to $85 or even $90 per barrel in the coming months. Now, this is a significant concern for India, which imports 88% of its oil, with 40% of that coming from Russia alone. So let's speak about the alternatives. So while there are actually alternatives to Russian oil, including suppliers from the Middle East, South America, and even the US, the issue lies in the price. Russian oil was provided to India at a substantial discount, but now with these sanctions in place, oil from other sources will be more expensive. If the price of crude oil continues to rise, it will directly impact inflation in India, which is already a big concern. So, what will be the economic consequences? Higher oil prices will lead to higher inflation, which in turn can affect consumer spending. This could also derail any plans to reduce interest rates, as the RBI may be reluctant to lower the repo rate if inflation remains high. So, India could be caught up in a difficult cycle, that is rising inflation, slower rate of growth, and also economic stagnation. So what's the road ahead? Still, there is hope that the situation may improve if the Russia-Ukraine war is resolved. US newly elected President Donald Trump has expressed intentions to mediate and also end the conflict, which could potentially lead to sanctions being lifted off. India is also in touch with the US to seek clarity on these sanctions. So we'll have to wait and watch how this entire story plays out. So now coming to the conclusion. In the short term, these sanctions pose a significant challenge to India's economy. With rising oil prices, inflation, and also economic uncertainty, the coming months could be tough for India. However, we will remain hopeful that the diplomatic efforts could lead to a resolution, and the sanctions may eventually be lifted off. So that's it for today's video. What do you think? How do you see the impact of these sanctions on India's economy? Share your thoughts in the comment section down below. Thank you.